Your jump to freelance starts here. Welcome to the Jump Moment.
Are you tired of designing the same graphics over and over again in your job? In this week's episode, I'm talking with Sara Ullah. Sara and I worked together for several years at High Desert Church. She was my first hire as a creative team leader, and it was really cool to see her grow over the years as a designer. One of the problems that you run into when you are on staff as a creative is that the diversity of projects that you get to invest in kind of peters out. Once you understand the rhythm of the organization, you don't really have a lot of new, exciting creative options. That's a piece of Sara's story. Over time, the projects started to become a little bit more predictable, and the thought and the desire to go freelance grew. There was a circumstance that happened that really opened the door for this to be a logical next step for Sara. And for those of you who have worked as a creative on a team somewhere, you might relate to what Sara shares. I enjoyed the conversation mostly because she said she didn't leave her job because of her boss, which was me. So that was encouraging, but also because it really presents another perspective of freelance than what we've heard so far on the show. Most of the episodes so far are with people who have gone the route of building an agency, and I love it. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But for many of us, myself included, the agency life isn't actually an ambition. I just want to be doing creative work in a way that helps the clients that I get to serve. And that's one of the things that Sara cites as a motivator. When it comes to resources, I'm going to recommend the Skool group again. And I know it may feel like that comes up a lot, but so much of what Sara wrestled with in her jump to freelance is what the Skool group for Jump to Freelance is actually built to address. She specifically called out pricing. So I want to share with you a resource that I've built specifically for the Skool group. This first resource that's a part of your membership in the Skool group is a guide on how to price your work. It's not a template where you just enter in your numbers. Instead, this is a way to walk you through the process of not just finding a rate that you feel good about, but actually understanding how you got there. Many times for me, the hardest part of pricing for me wasn't just picking a number. I could do that, but it was justifying the number. I needed to understand why I was pricing my work at the rate that I was pricing it so that I could actually feel confident in the conversations I was having. To say, so-and-so does this price, and so therefore me too, that wasn't enough to give me the confidence I needed to navigate those conversations. Now on to the conversation with Sara Ullah. I hope you enjoy it. Sara, thank you so much for taking some time just to share your story of your jump moment, and a little bit of context in terms of what you do. I always love starting with this first question. Tell us a little bit about your business. What is it that you do?
Yeah, so my business is called Rad Rose Designs. I am a freelance graphic designer in the truest sense of the word. I work from home. I work alone. It's just me, myself, and I do everything completely remotely. So I can travel anywhere, go anywhere, or just stay at home and work. Um, and yeah, it's pretty great. I get paid to do what I love, and I have the flexibility within that to do kind of whatever I want with my free time or even within the work. I have the flexibility to kind of choose what I do. So yeah, and I've been doing this for, I guess, almost a decade. True freelance, it's been, what is that, like 7 years? So yeah, that's kind of what I do. And
Yeah.
I, within graphic design, I do all kinds of things. I really love to do anything print related. I do a lot of digital assets as well. I work for several churches. That's kind of my niche. But also work with a lot of small businesses, from coffee shops and construction businesses to indie authors. So kind of dabble in a lot of things and keep it
That's
interesting.
cool. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think back to even being in school for graphic design. That was the dream. Part of what was so attractive about the industry to me was I can do all these different things. Like one day I'm, designing a logo for a disc golf company, and then the next day it's like an acupuncturist needs my help. It's like,
Exactly.
wow, that's cool. So
Yes. Yeah.
that's
I
great.
always hated the kind of like monotonous work of just
Yeah.
like actually my first professional job in the industry was for a dental marketing company. And so everything was teeth and mouths all the time. And it was just like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll get into that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely am way more interested in being creative and getting to do what I love to do, and working with clients that also trust me with their designs and their needs for communication. So yeah,
Yeah, that's great.
that's my life, my joy.
Yeah, I would get real tired of teeth all the time for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that I've found in just some of these conversations, you find people who are good at a certain thing,
Mm.
and we think as creatives like we want to get paid. I mean, that's not a it's not a crazy idea, I guess, but we think that a job is the pathway. But
Mm.
what ends up happening is we get stuck doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And it's like,
Mhm.
look, I'm happy to take on a dentist client, but I don't want my life to be dentist. And so, because I'm
Yes.
not a dentist, like that's why, otherwise I'd probably be doing that thing, they drill the
Yes,
teeth and
yes.
stuff. Like I would have gone that route if I loved teeth so much. And so, yeah, it's a really an interesting problem. And so that I love the way that you're, approaching this. I mean, just freelance. You're just doing freelance graphic design. Like
Mhm.
that's I think the dream for so many in the creative space. There's a bit of a tension in terms of doing your own thing, of course. Many of us
Mm.
do end up as a career graphic designer, an employee somewhere, or maybe, some bounce around a lot. But um, what was the stuff that you were doing before you decided to make this jump? Was this an aspiration you were building toward, or, what does that look like?
When I was in college, I started doing way more freelance work, actual jobs for actual clients, not just like my mom's friend or something.
Hey,
So
she may have a business too.
that's true, huh?
designing for their invite for the doTERRA thing, like
So good.
that's
That
fine.
is way too true. Way too real. But yeah, so I started doing some freelancing on the side when I was in college, and got through college in the 4 quick years and got my first job at the dental marketing company. Hated it and just, it was a means to an end at that point.
Yeah.
But I had this initial dream of a dream job at my home church at High Desert Church in Southern California. And my mom worked there. And so she told me one day that they were hiring for a graphic designer. And I was like, that's amazing. I'm going to apply right now. And long story short, Matt, you hired me at High
It's
Desert
true. Yeah.
Church.
Don't know how
um,
you made it past, but yeah. Yeah.
I know, huh? A strict process for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started working my dream job at Desert Church, and it was awesome for the first several years. Just getting to do a lot of creative projects for the kingdom of God. Like that was my my dream, my ultimate dream, being a graphic designer in a church, in my home church. That's amazing. And I feel like you were like a really great mentor and guide for me in that environment. You really
Good.
were. And yeah, I just remember feeling like, man, I feel so protected like within this industry, and able to just kind of be creative, do what I want, and gain confidence and skills in that industry. Um, and I learned a lot through all of that. And I feel like along the way, I kind of realized that, um, we've talked about this. I am an executor. I want to get stuff done. I just want to churn projects out. And I feel like I did a lot of that at that job, but also realizing that I wanted to be a little more creative. Um, and I feel like any job kind of starts to get monotonous. You're doing similar things, the cyclical events that are happening throughout
Yeah.
the year. Um, and I just kind of found myself wanting to be my own boss in ways, and kind of make my own rules. And High Desert Church wasn't not even that strict with their their needs for their designs. There was a lot of creativity in it, and a lot of leeway, but just kind of found myself wanting more. So I just kind of let that mm, cook in the back of my mind. And at the same time, I like to say I tricked you into hiring my husband at High Desert Church,
Sure.
and
Yeah. Another terrible decision. Yeah.
so good. And so yeah, when my husband got hired on in our department, we had been talking about how I wanted to be a freelance graphic designer at some point. and he wanted to just keep moving up in his position in the church. And so he eventually moved up and was going to become my boss, but I could not have him as my direct report. And so he moved up, I moved out, and I was happy to do so. I had been still kind of hanging on to some of those freelance clients along the way. And so felt like I maybe hopefully had enough to kind of pay the bills. But yeah, I was also kind of nervous about that. Wasn't quite sure how I would sustain any sort of business, not really knowing if any of these clients were going to be long term
Yeah.
or what. But at the same time, knowing I wasn't the breadwinner in the family, and so Aaron kind of got to take on that role while allowing me to kind of figure out what I was doing, what I wanted to do. So yeah, all that to say, I think the catalyst for me moving on to freelance was really my husband almost becoming my boss, and that wasn't allowed. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was always kind of in the back of my mind that I wanted to work from home, and
Yeah.
so it just
That's
kind of
great.
worked out that way. Yeah.
I totally relate to what you're saying in terms of there's something really exciting when you first get into a new organization.
Mm.
And then there's something that really becomes not exciting. Like I feel like there's a I love it or I hate it kind of dichotomy that exists for a lot of creatives. And I know
Hmm.
for me, I felt that even at High Desert Church, every
Hmm.
stretch where I felt like I began to understand the scope of what was being asked of me, I started getting really frustrated really quickly. And
Mm.
then in some cases, I was able to then take on a new assignment, be put in a new role, or provide oversight to a new area that was different, that kind of stuff. But as soon as it felt like, okay, this is now a machine that is operating in a certain direction, and I'm not being approached with this entirely new problem anymore,
Mm.
it's really hard to sustain that over time. And so
Mhm.
even to see that for you, where learning the new systems or the new routines, the new, ministry seasons, whatever, that's really exciting the first time around. And then the
Mm.
second time, it's like, ooh, there were some things that I could do differently than last time. And the third time, it's like, well, I sort of feel like we've solved this problem. And the fourth
Right.
time, it's
Mm.
like, seriously, are we doing this again? Can we stop doing this, please? I never want to do this again. I don't know if that's
Yes.
not put words in your mouth, but like,
No, that's pretty accurate.
yeah, yeah. I think for anybody who is listening and has been a part of an organization for a long period of time, I guess, the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is like, yeah, like that is what happens. Like that's kind of a
Mm.
natural part of being a creative. And part of what's so attractive about freelance is that it gives you a little bit of that diversity, it gives you
Mhm.
the ability to learn something new and different. And even if you're working with your fifth coffee shop, it's in a different location. There's sort of a
Mm.
different vibe around the company. They have a different mission or purpose. I mean, whatever it is, there's something that's different and unique, and it
Yeah.
changes enough so that you get to be creative again.
Hmm.
You had mentioned that Aaron moving up, and for context, Aaron is Sarah's husband. He worked with me as well at High Desert Church. Um, when Aaron moved up, that kind of gave you an opportunity. It almost like it didn't quite force you because we came up with some weird structure, but
Yeah,
but yeah,
we did. We definitely
the
did.
the writing was on the wall for sure. Uh, but
Yes.
but what was there something that kind of like held you back from making that decision? Because it sounds like freelance was on your radar for a while. Was there a hesitation or something that kind of kept you from that, or was it more that you were just waiting for that right opportunity?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. I was fearful that I wouldn't have enough clients or enough long-term clients. Wasn't even really sure how to get clients. And I also, just being blatantly honest, I didn't know how much to charge for this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And like, I didn't know what would be incredibly offensive to people to ask and or what would be appropriate. And so yeah, I think it was just kind of those little details that um I just had to take that. I I would call it now like a jump of faith. I had to
yeah, yeah,
just step out and do it. Um and I've learned kind of along the way now that those fears that we have, they kind of work themselves out. You figure out along the way what you're worth, what you're good at, what you like to do. And I think I was always pretty good at customer service at High Desert Church.
yeah,
And so that really helped me build relationships with these people that I was working alongside. And I think that then in turn turned into me having sustained good
Yeah.
relationships with these people. And so I should never have really been worried about the clients because honestly, I've never really promoted myself except for now, I guess, on this podcast.
Yeah. It's going to be flooding
But
in with requests.
yeah, I know. But I've never really promoted myself. It's just always been this kind of organic past relationships that I've had in the work environment that, they move on from wherever we were working together. And then they remember me and working as a graphic designer for them. And they loved that whole experience. And so they come back to me and say, hey, we're now at this new church or new business, whatever, need some graphic design help over here. Are you doing freelance? And I was available at that point. So I just had to kind of realize that I needed to take that step of faith. And since freelancing was kind of always brewing in the back of my mind, just wasn't quite sure how to execute on it. I knew that it was a passion for me. And with that passion, I would be able to make it work. And yeah, so those were kind of
Yeah.
some of my fears, but they've since dissipated. They dissipate over time for anybody who's having similar fears.
Yeah, that's great. I think some of this stuff is stuff that you can't really figure out kind of in a
Hmm.
vacuum. You sort of have to get into the trenches. I know for me, early on, one of my biggest fears is, what do I do if I undercharge a project? And it's
Yeah.
like, you, you literally just get paid less money for it. Like that's what happens. Like
And it's
still,
okay.
still, yeah, right, exactly. It's like still do the project, still charge the rate that you told them that you were going to charge, and
Hmm.
then recognize, oh, I made $14 an hour on that project. That's too little. Okay, I missed the
Yeah.
mark here. But then you now have like information and you have a little bit more experience to say, you
Mhm.
know what, I can't charge that rate anymore. That's how you learn. You learn by missing the mark sometimes, you know. So I think
Totally.
that's great. So kind of with that in mind, like what are, just a couple things that now that you've been doing this for quite a while, what are some of those things that you'd go back and tell past Sarah?
Yeah. I think one piece of advice I would tell myself is that just remember that you bring something unique to the table. I think that was kind of one of my fears too, is thinking, oh, there are plenty of graphic designers out there, plenty of freelance people. Why would anybody want to hire me? But I really do think that every freelancer brings something unique to the table and you have unique relationships with people. And um, I think that should have been my sign to take the jump, to start the jump a little bit earlier. Um, but also know your worth and get excited to get paid for what you love to do. If this is a passion of yours, take the step without even quite knowing how you're going to get there, where it's going to go, how much to charge for things. Like, um, yeah, I think just being somebody that you want to work with is going to be the best thing that you could do to really set yourself up for success in a freelance industry.
Yeah, that's great. This is a new question I'm curious about. I'd love to know from you if there's something that you found to be particularly helpful as this could be early in your career. This was helpful to get your bearings. It could be
Mhm.
today. This is a critical part of an offering that you have or a service that you provide or something. But what's a tool that you would kind of elevate to the top there?
Yeah. Honestly, Fiverr Workspace, it's been really
Oh,
great for me. Yeah, to just kind of keep track of everything, whether I'm charging a client per hour or for an entire project all in one, or even contracted employees that I'm working or businesses that I'm working with. Yeah, it's been super helpful to just kind of have everything in one place and then, at tax time, have all those numbers ready to go. It kind of gives you that history too, to look back on and see, okay, how much did I make maybe at this time of year? And how can I prepare for that this coming year, knowing that maybe that's a little bit of a slow season? How can I prepare for that in this upcoming year? And just keeps everything really organized and, yeah, on top of my mind so that I'm not kind of getting lost in the tracking of hours and payments and everything, but it's just kind of always there to help me and create invoices and send invoices. And really, it's a great feature. It's a great tool that I've used, and it's worth a little bit of money that you pay for it.
yeah, that's great. So Is this something where you have to be a Fiverr, like you have to make services available on Fiverr, or
No, I don't think you have to offer any services. I
wow.
have definitely tried Fiverr before and, got nothing out of it. Sorry, Fiverr.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I like your time tracking though. So I think, yeah, I think you could just go there and sign
Oh
up
yeah.
and create an account. It's super organized and super like they even have like great customer service. If you have a problem or a question, they're super quick about helping you figure those things out. So
That's
yeah,
great.
it's
Yeah,
super
it's
great.
workspace.fiverr.com.
There you
And
go.
then at least at the time of recording, this is January of 2025. They have a free plan, and then they also have a $24 a month plan, or annually it's 18 a month. It's cool to see a tool like that. That's been really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. So far, so good. Gonna keep using them for sure.
Yeah, love it. All right, very good. Well, Sarah, thanks for sharing your story and just your insights and a little bit even of just kind of your experience in that thing that prompted you to make the jump to freelance. I think it's so cool to, I mean, for me, from my perspective, it's a little bit selfish here, but it's cool to hear that side of it. I told
Mm.
Aaron the other day, I was a little worried that Sarah's going to come on and be like, yeah, I made the jump to freelance because my jerk boss, he's a total idiot. And like, I had to get
Stop
out of there. I
it.
was like, oh no, like, dude, maybe this episode won't publish, um,
No, not
but
even
yeah,
close. You're good.
yeah, it's
And
good.
you,
It's good to hear your, kind of your whole story when it comes to making that jump.
yeah, my perspective of it too, not just, oh
Yeah.
no, my boss is here. I gotta tell him why I'm
Yeah.
leaving.
That's right. Yeah. I
No,
got
but
no
you were,
power anymore.
yeah, I know. So true. But yeah, you were really great. And I know that you and Aaron are really good friends to this day too. And so yeah, we both just thank you for your mentorship through that. You definitely had a little bit of history behind you in the industry and church world. So, yeah, you were a great friend to us in figuring out kind of where we wanted to go from here. And somehow we made it all the way to Texas. And
Love it.
I'm still freelancing, but yeah, and Aaron is just doing great in his role too. So, yeah, it's honestly freelance. The jump to freelance was one of the best decisions that I could have made.
I really appreciate Sarah's observation that you're not going to have everything figured out before you make the jump to freelance. So many of these things work themselves out over time. And even as our conversation mentioned, sometimes you get it wrong, and that's okay. That's how you build a business that you love, is by making mistakes, learning from them, and building a better future. So if you're on the fence, I want to encourage you, yes, absolutely take advantage of today to prepare. Do research, study things, follow other people who are inspiring you, and learn things from them as much as you can. But don't wait to make the jump until you have all of your answers, because you never will.
Thanks for listening to The Jump Moment. To find support for your jump to freelance, join our community at jumptofreelance.com.